This is the Regained Wellness Podcast with Jamie Logie, episode 135, Apple Cider Vinegar.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jamie Logie. I run regainedwellness.com, and this is the Regained Wellness Podcast. And thank you for joining me here on Apple Cider Vinegar Tuesday, or whenever you're listening to it. That's when this show comes out. So this will be talking about what apple cider vinegar is, how it's made, how it all comes together, and most importantly, a lot of crazy good health benefits that come from it. If you're using it, you're probably very aware. Or you might need a refresher. If you're not, you'll learn a lot about how amazing this stuff really is. So before all that, just want to say first, if you're new here, welcome. Thanks for coming on out. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I should be there. And if you're interested in supporting the show, I'm part of a thing called Patreon, which is kind of like a crowdfunding sort of support system, but it starts as low as like $2 a month, and then different levels that you are able to support. There's different rewards that come with it, from, shout outs on the podcast to Patreon only episodes to full on nutrition coaching. You can see more at patreon.com/wellness. And that's got all the info right there. Okay, let's get right into this. So apple cider vinegar, or ACV if you like, or even cider vinegar, it sometimes goes as, is a type of vinegar, and it's made from cider, or what they call apple must, just like fuller pieces of apple. It's got a kind of, if you've seen it before, but if you haven't, it's got a pale kind of medium amberish color. It's in the case of the health benefits that we're looking at here today, we're looking at either unpasteurized or ideally organic apple cider vinegar. And this contains what they call the mother of vinegar. And that's that like cobwebby like appearance that sort of floats around in it. It makes it kind of look like it's the vinegar is sort of slightly congealed. If you know what I mean. It's the mother of vinegar. This is important in the whole health process of what makes this stuff so good. It's basically, mother vinegar is composed of cellulose, acetic acid bacteria, and that develops on any sort of like fermenting alcoholic liquid. Sort of the same case with kombucha. If you drink that, it's a little different, but along the same lines. So when this stuff is developed on the fermenting alcohol liquid, it turns the alcohol into acetic acid with the help of oxygen from the air. So that's when more of this activation thing starts happening. So it's added to wine, ciders, or other alcoholic liquids to produce the vinegar. So the process of actually making the apple cider vinegar is, it's pretty simple. It's made by crushing the apples, squeezing out the liquid, then the bacteria and yeast are added to the liquid to start the alcoholic fermentation process. Similar, just like when you're making beer, spirits, or wine, they all follow this similar path. And then, so during that fermentation process, the sugars are turned into alcohol. Then there's a second fermentation process. Then that's when the alcohol is converted into vinegar by, like I said, that acetic acid forming bacteria. And it creates, besides acetic acid, malic acid. And that combination is what gives vinegar its sour taste, whether it's like white vinegar or malt vinegar or apple cider vinegar. It's that malic acid and acetic acid that gives it that sharp, soury, weird taste that some people love. I happen to love it. You might not. If you look actually at the French description or definition of vinegar, en français, actually means sour wine, and that's kind of what you're drinking here. You're drinking kind of a sour apple wine, as opposed to the fermentation process that happens with grapes. And then with the wine process, there's different aging and storing, and that can develop deeper concentrations of not just the alcohol, but the sugar content or how dry it's going to be or whatever. So with apple cider vinegar, it's actually it's a pretty simple process. You can make this stuff at home, no problem. Like there's a ton of YouTube tutorials on how to make this. A lot, like you can make all these sort of things like kombucha at home or kefir, any of these like fermented, positive gut bacteria based products or beverages, or you can do your own pickling. Kombucha takes quite a while to make. It's where you can, buy really good versions of them now, and the kombucha is available everywhere, and amazing for gut health and digestion and healthy gut bacteria and the whole deal. The same thing, you can make apple cider vinegar, but it's so cheap to buy everywhere. So I'll start actually just getting right into it with the health benefits it provides, because it's quite a bit. And like starting off when we're talking about that acetic acid, that's part of what's considered to have a lot of the biological effects in it. And apple cider vinegar itself does not have, it's got a little bit of vitamins and minerals, like not a lot. It's got a little bit of potassium. Really good quality apple cider vinegar will contain some amino acids and antioxidants, and it's low calorie. I think it's like 3 calories per tablespoon, which is very, very low. So, I mean, it's not like it's a, vitamin mineral concoction. It's got its benefits from that fermentation process, which can help your health. So looking at one of the big things is that it can kill many types of bacteria. And that's one of the things that's amazing about vinegar. It's incredible what fermentation and vinegar, how it sort of exists naturally. Like we can help coax it along and develop it, but how amazing any fermented type things can be for our health. Like even alcohol, even a little bit of alcohol. I've covered that a lot, especially with wine, that there's a lot of health benefits, and obviously don't want to overdo it in that case. But, when you think of like a homemade cleaning solution or stuff like that, or natural ones, you always vinegar is always in it because it's good for cleaning and disinfecting, and stuff like that. Or I don't know if you've ever used it for treating like nail fungus. You can even get rid of lice. I remember having like a horrific lice outbreak when I was a kid. I think every kid's had lice. I remember just going through our school like wildfire and just having to have these like homemade shampoos that had vinegar and all kinds of crap in it. But everyone knows as well, vinegar helps to treat things like warts or ear infections. And I mean, vinegar has been used all the way back to Hippocrates, and, who's the father of modern medicine. They use vinegar for wound cleaning, and, thousands and thousands of years ago. Vinegar is used as a food preservative. That's kind of the creation of sushi came about by, there's lots of different stories about this, but accidentally with the contact of vinegar and rice and how that was used as a preservative. But when that came in contact with raw fish, it would preserve it and kind of created this interesting flavor. I mean, we use rice wine vinegar now to make sushi or sashimi or whatever. But that, it was always used as a preservative. And it shows that a lot of studies show that it inhibit bacteria growth, like E. coli, especially, from growing in the food and spoiling it. So a lot of these ancient preservation techniques actually had a lot of, legit science behind it. And they just, as usual, sort of the things they sort of discovered by accident, and oh, our food's holding up better. It's not going rancid or rotten and we can't touch it. And they find, it's from things like the vinegar. So, I mean, if you're looking for a natural way to preserve your food, apple cider vinegar can be used like that. It's a good way, if you want to make a good cleaning solution for berries and fruit, fruits that go moldy very quickly. Like if you buy a thing of strawberries or blackberries or blueberries, they can go moldy so quick. Once something's in that, if you keep it in a container or whatever, once that one thing gets moldy, it just spreads right through the entire thing and can destroy all your food. And we go, as much as we do need to eat fresh food, it is hard to keep it always on hand, because if you don't consume it right away, or if you've overbought for the week because you're not able to get to grocery stores that quick, it rots and it goes out. And we're throwing out around 20 pounds of food a month. And money-wise, that adds up to about $2,000 a year. So, or the size of one large latte from Starbucks. But it's something, we got to keep on top of our food, especially in your fridge. Once things start going rotten, it can really spread throughout the whole fridge. So your fridge is like a circulation system. It's not a cold box, it's a cold distributor, a cold air distributor. So if you have rotten or moldy foods or fruit or produce or whatever, that mold is circulating through the entire fridge and can come into contamination with a lot of your other foods. So you want to make sure once moldy food's in there, get it out as quick as possible and clean it. So it's just talking about like with berries and things like that tend to go moldy quickly. You can make these sort of preservative solutions where you mix 1 part vinegar to 10 parts water to rinse them in that, and that sort of acts as that mild preservative. It keeps them a little fresher and it keeps them from spoiling quicker. So it's amazing stuff what vinegar does, especially in the case of apple cider vinegar. We can add it to all sorts of foods that we're cooking with. You can mix it in, just with straight water. You probably wouldn't do that with normal vinegar. It would throw you off a little bit. But apple cider vinegar, it can have that a little bit of a harsh flavor, but there's still that little bit of touch of apple that can be helpful. You can use it in cooking and all sorts of stuff. Okay, the next, and I'd say this is probably the biggest health benefit that comes from apple cider vinegar. I've always been like aware of apple cider vinegar. It's more in the last year and a half where I've actually been using it more personally and understanding how good this stuff can be. And so the one big health effect has to do with its ability to lower blood sugar levels and fight diabetes. So like looking at people with type 2 diabetes, and it's characterized by elevated blood sugars, either through insulin resistance or an inability to produce insulin. And high blood sugar is still a problem when people don't have diabetes. And it's, when you're eating a lot of, potential sugars or refined carbohydrates, you're causing these blood sugar spikes and insulin releases. And then with the spike comes a crash that can lead to lethargy and irritability, and then more cravings for more sugars or carbohydrates. Then you eat again, they spike again, it's up and down. So it affects, a lot of times, like, if you're at restaurants or if you've worked in a restaurant and you're dealing with jackass customers, and a lot of the time it's not their real personalities, or in your case, if you're ever irritable or hangry, as people like to say, that's not your personality coming through. That's a blood sugar issue. So when you're seeing people who are waiting in restaurants and it's busy and there's massive delays in the food and they're just snapping on their server, or they want to drop kick the bus boy. Even though that is a jerkish thing to do, that's more because of the blood sugar issues. It doesn't really reflect who they are. So when you see someone hungry, you got to sort of take it with a grain of salt. And deal with it. So, everyone has to deal with blood sugar issues. And even if you don't have diabetes, that's believed to also be a cause of various like chronic diseases and inflammations and premature aging and the whole deal. So you want to keep those blood sugar levels stable as possible. That's why you do want to focus on, primarily like non-starchy vegetables, proteins, fats. So it's going to keep things humming along a little more stable compared to the spikes that come from the sugars and the carbohydrates. But if you can't, you're not always going to avoid those things, whether it's for, I don't know, events going on and we're coming into the holiday season. Avoiding refined carbs and sugar is just not always possible. It's a good idea and I agree with it, but I know it's not practical at the same time. I know I'm going to eat it, you're going to eat it, it's going to happen. And this is where apple cider vinegar can have a super powerful effect. And it's shown, apple cider vinegar is shown to have these multiple benefits for insulin function and blood sugar levels. So let's look here. It improves insulin sensitivity during a high carb meal by 19 to 34%, which is huge. And it significantly lowers blood glucose and insulin responses. So it just helps prevent those crazy spikes. It also can reduce blood sugar by 34% when someone's eaten 50 grams of white bread. So that knocks it down quite a bit. White bread is essentially just like eating sugar. It's such a fast-acting carbohydrate in the body because it's so refined and a pulverized, bleached flour, which is essentially sugar, and it hits the body so quick. So also, if you take 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before bedtime, it can reduce fasting blood sugars by 4% in people. I can link a lot of these studies up. If you want to go to the show notes today, that will be regainedwellness.com/135. And it just, if you want to see, not that you don't have to believe me, but if you just want to see a little more in depth on some of these things. So there's a lot of other studies too in not just humans, but like in rats and stuff like that. So you take, again, that with a grain of salt, but it's actually something they've still looked at in humans. And they show that vinegar can increase insulin sensitivity and significantly lower blood sugar responses during meals. So for those reasons, if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, or you have issues with just blood sugar levels in general, it can be very useful for people in those situations. So if you're finding yourself where it's, at a meal that's out of your control and you still going to eat it, or it's an event, I don't know, whatever's going on, having apple cider vinegar like before or after can really help keep the blood sugar levels at stable. It's not that this isn't going to get you off the hook. It's like, oh, I can eat these meals all day long as I have apple cider vinegar. You're still going to run into massive problems, but it's just in those occasions where you want to keep your blood sugar levels down. Apple cider vinegar, like a couple tablespoons after or later in the day, again, are still going to be super helpful. So if some people are on blood sugar lowering medications, and that's when you want to still always check with doctors and whatnot. If you're taking apple cider vinegar or looking at the whole thing. So whenever it's, medications or whatnot, it's still something you always want to check with doctors or physicians just to see what's up. So, but ultimately, it shows great promise in improving insulin sensitivity, keeping blood sugar level responses, moderate after meals. And that's one good takeaway here. If you can think about keeping your blood sugar levels as stable as possible, it's not only going to make you feel better, it's going to have long-term better health benefits to you, as opposed to that thing just going up and down and up and down. And it can lead to, your burnout of your pancreas. And then that, like I said, the premature aging, inflammation issues, it's a real mess. So going along with another point here that probably appeals to a lot of people, that it can actually help you lose weight by making you feel full. And, given that vinegar lowers your blood sugar and your insulin levels, it makes sense it could help you lose weight. And these are human studies as well, suggesting it can also increase satiety or your feelings of fullness, and can help you eat fewer calories, and even potential, lost pounds overall. So if you're having, again, if it's like a high carb meal, having apple cider vinegar along with it, whether you cook with it or it's like you mix it into water after, really can increase feelings of fullness. I've noticed this myself. Like when I have it, it just, it's, I don't know, it's not, you don't feel like bloated, like you can't eat anymore, but it just, you don't feel like you're as hungry. And looking at this, it can make people eat 200 to close to 300 fewer calories for the rest of the day. And that, that can help over the long term. And they're looking, there's a study in some obese individuals, and it showed that this daily apple cider vinegar consumption could lead to reduced belly fat, waist circumference, lower blood triglycerides, and weight loss itself. So people who were taking 1 tablespoon, which is around 15 milliliters, were on average losing around 2.5 pounds. People who were taking 2 tablespoons were losing around 3.7 pounds. This is a study that went on for around 12 weeks. So, there's a ton of other factors that are involved in this whole thing. And it's also that to keep in mind, it doesn't mean the more you take, the more that you could potentially lose. The cap off was around this 2 tablespoon per day. It's just, it helped prevent those excess sugar and carbohydrate cravings. It made you feel fuller, so you're not thinking about food. So, it's going to go hand in hand with all these different things. Obviously, eating as clean as possible, exercise, good sleep, other water consumption through the whole day. But it's seen to have these positive benefits. Okay, another massive health benefit here is with the issue of cholesterol and heart disease, and apple cider vinegar is seen to lower cholesterol and also reduce your risk of heart disease. And, that being one of the world's biggest causes of death right now, it's known that several measurable, different biological factors are linked to either a decreased or increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And some of these risk factors have been shown to be improved by consuming things like apple cider vinegar. again, these are things you'll see reported on. Like, you can go on tons of different websites and learn about benefits. And like I said, some are in human trials and studies. This one, to do with the cholesterol and the heart disease, these studies were done in rats. And they're seen, like, mice and rats are seen to have similar, I don't know the whole deal, but similar, like, digestive systems to human, or circulatory systems, and and I think pigs as well. There's some of these different animals share different traits, and that's, so whatever you feel about that, still keep that in mind when you're looking at some of these studies. So in the case of the rats here, I don't know why I just thought of the rats from the Muppets Take Manhattan when they're cooking in that little diner. I don't know why my head goes there, but whatever. In the case of the rats with the apple cider vinegar and the cholesterol, they showed that not only was apple cider vinegar able to lower cholesterol, it also lowered triglyceride levels. And they're thinking it might be because of this one. I mentioned that there are some antioxidants in the apple cider vinegar, one of them being chlorogenic acid. And that's been shown to protect your LDL cholesterol particles from becoming oxidized. And that's seen as one of the big things that actually causes the heart disease. Is this oxidation in the blood just kind of really corrupts and alters these different, in the case of LDLs, they're lipoproteins, and it changes the structure, and that can lead to potential heart disease and the whole deal. Another thing as well, too, that I was one of the first things I was aware of with apple cider vinegar is that it's potentially able to reduce blood pressure. And that's obviously a major risk in heart disease and any cardiovascular issues, stuff like that. So again, what works in animals doesn't always work in humans. And, it's still encouraging because it's obviously having an effect in an animal. So that's interesting. And we're still mammals ourselves. There's one, what did I find here? There's one human observational study from Harvard again that showed that women who ate salad dressings with vinegar had a reduced risk of heart disease. So I'll just say that whenever you see observational studies, this is not the most ideal way of developing theories and research and coming to conclusions about various, like, medical issues or health issues or stuff like that. It's considered a little more of a flawed approach to research. Not that it doesn't have merit, but it's not, you can't write this stuff in stone when it's an observational study, because a lot of other factors are not regarded, and, you can easily take it or leave it or whatever. But it just, in this case, this is something they noticed, that they're like, okay, they're eating dressings with vinegar, they're having lower heart disease. There's a lot of other things that could be leading or helping with that, and it's not necessarily directly tied to the apple cider vinegar, but something bad didn't come up. This is a positive thing. It's just showing an association. You can't prove when you're talking about observational studies and things like correlation and whatever, you can't prove that what they're investigating actually caused or helped anything. So that's the thing. When you're seeing studies that talk about causation, don't want to get off topic here, but correlation and causation are two different things when you're looking at research or medical research or nutritional research. Causation means there's more of a direct connection, and they're looking at something specific and that causing a specific reaction or result. Correlation just means they're potentially associated. It's not directly responsible for creating or not creating a certain effect in someone. So if you see the words causation, it's a little more of an effective approach and more of a meaningful, result that they're studying, whereas observational studies and associations are not the strongest way to come up with conclusions. So I'll say this, I'll start winding it down here. When you're looking at some of these things that we've used for millennia, in the case of like fermented products or apple cider vinegar, we've only just started looking at the potential health benefits, but we're seeing a lot of positive connections that it can create a lot of health benefits. And I'd say with apple cider vinegar, primarily the main thing is that blood sugar, insulin response thing and how it is able to control that pretty well. That seems to be pretty straightforward that it does have a lot of benefits in it. And with some of these other things, it potentially looks encouraging, but there's still more research and stuff like that. But like I said, it could be the flip side where it's causing, detriment or potential harm. But as of right now, it's at least associated with positive health benefits. So I still think it's very helpful and useful, and something that there's really been no side effects noted with it. Like I said, if you're on different medications, run it by a doctor or physician. But the fact that there isn't, side effects noted with normal consumption, like I said, not going over 2 tablespoons a day, means it's something you can check out with yourself and see how you're feeling. Wait and see. There'll be potentially more and more studies as time goes by, but it looks like something that can have a positive effect on your health. It's something I use. Ideally in the morning, I'll do it first thing when I wake up, and I'll add it in like a tablespoon, maybe 2 at the most, with like a huge glass of water to start the day. After you've basically been dehydrated through the entire night, it's going to kick off your hydration and your cleansing, and seeing apple cider vinegar having that benefit to help with digestion. Also that it serves as a prebiotic, and not so different than a probiotic, which is your actual, the healthy gut bacteria, which can help with gut health, digestion, ability, immune system functioning, even to improve your mood. A lot of the, we call neurotransmitters that affect your mood and stuff like that, are 2/3 of them are produced in your gut, in your small intestine. So that, not just the brain. So it's amazing. Like, they do call the gut like your second brain. It is responsible for a lot of how you feel and your mood and how you act and whatnot. And so probiotics are the actual good gut bacteria. Prebiotics are what those bacteria sort of feed on. It's like a fertilizer for them. So it's not a probiotic per se, but it can help create that good environment. And hopefully you're getting exposure to a lot of good different gut bacteria, whether they're from things like kombucha or kefir, kimchi, or different, mushrooms or green vegetables or berries. You want to have this like wide spectrum and as many of these different strains of good gut bacteria as possible. And having something like an apple cider vinegar is going to help set that stage to make them even healthier and better. So that's one of the other reasons I use them for. Then I mentioned like the cleansing, the digestion aspect. So yeah, a tablespoon or 2 of that. You can even throw in some fresh squeezed lemon, which is even more cleansing, detoxification, digestion ability. So that's a good way to start off. It's really easy to incorporate into your diet, just like that. Just drink it down the hatch. It's, might burn a little, but you'll get used to it. I've had way worse shots of stuff over the years that I won't get into. So apple cider vinegar is not too bad. Easy, like I said, to cook with. Use it in salad dressings. It's awesome for that. Even if you make like a homemade mayonnaise or like a marinade, you can always throw it in that. And that's why they'll use vinegars in marinades, because it helps to kind of slowly break down and tenderize meat a little bit better. If you leave it for too long, it can actually just like rot it right out. It just sort of breaks it down so much. I think you don't want to go more than 24 hours with a marinade that has a vinegar base to it, but that's why it makes, more better meals, like more tender meats and whatnot. Salad dressings is a great way to do it. This is what I'll do a lot as well. I mean, there's no reason to buy a store-bought crap-based salad dressing, and a lot of those things are filled with like not necessarily trans fats, but they have been found, but like really inferior vegetable oils, or like corn or seed oils, like canola oils and sunflower, just stuff that can cause real inflammation in the body, where you can make the best salad dressing in the world just with some like extra virgin olive oil, throw in some apple cider vinegar, maybe a bit of lemon, a little bit of sea salt, pepper, whisk it up. Awesome. And it's like half a cent per serving. I'll sometimes use like balsamic vinegar as well too. You can use red wine vinegar. And there's still health benefits from those things, like the red wine vinegar and whatnot, but just it looks like a little bit more benefits from apple cider vinegar. So play around, make your own dressings like that. I do that all the time. This stuff is infinitely better, in my opinion, and way healthier. Okay, so if you're looking to get some of this stuff, I'd say the most popular brand of apple cider vinegar is Bragg's, B-R-A-G-G. You can find them most everywhere. I mean, depending where you live, obviously. And you want to look for organic, unfiltered apple cider vinegar with the mother in it. So that's going to bring all those health benefits. And there's different, I mean, you can find all sorts of versions. You can go to like local farmers markets that probably make their own. I go to a store, if you live in Ontario, I don't know if it's more southern Ontario, called Farm Boy. It's a chain store, but I don't think there's even more than 10 of them or whatever. And they work with local farms and stuff in that area where you're getting, so where I live, they'll only, get their produce or meats or whatever from farms in that area, as say like a Whole Foods. No disrespect to Whole Foods, but if say you're at a Whole Foods in Boston, some of their products would be coming from the other side of the country, depending on where their sources are or their vendors or whatever. Not all the time, but in those cases. So in the case with this store, Farm Boy, or if you can find smaller like market-based or like privately owned markets or whatever that are getting their stuff from nearby, that's even more better. And more better, I don't know if that's English, that's even better. And this store, I'll get apple cider vinegar from here because it's made in the region and it's organic, it contains the mother and whatever. So if you're, don't have access to this Bragg's brand or a good local organic version, just look for those 3 things: organic, unfiltered, and with the mother. And that's going to probably cover you for everything. Okay, I'm going to cut it off here. I bet you didn't think I could talk for a half hour on apple cider vinegar, but it's very interesting stuff, and I think it's worth passing this info on. So again, if you want to see more of the details and the different studies and some of the resources I looked for in researching this, go to regainedwellness.com/135, and I'll link them up all there if you're someone who likes to go a little deeper. It's kind of the after show, just a lot lamer than most after shows or after parties, but with a lot more dense information on whatever I've been talking about. Okay, so that's it for me. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe. If you really like the show, leave it a rating and review, then more people get to see it. And, feel free to share with anyone you think might enjoy it. And I'll be back soon. See ya.